Hello and welcome to a quarantine episode of Called Bank Sports. The Jazz are currently sitting at the top of the West and at the top of the NBA with the only undefeated record of 4-0. Doesn't mean a lot when you have, in my opinion, only played two quarters of basketball against solid finals talent, but hey, we'll take the wins where they come and we will enjoy this good start to the season. So Dale and I today, first of all, wanted to talk about A, why the Jazz are going 82-0. B, why Rudy Gobert is already the consensus MVP and there's no bones about it. And then C, just kind of look at the records and more so C, of the other teams in the NBA and kind of what we think it means. Like the Los Angeles Lakers sitting at 3-3 after dropping a 25+ point lead against the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Suns definitely not coming out how they want at 1-3, but it is important to remember that last year the Jazz started at 4-4 before going on a tear to get the 1 seed. And, the last undefeated team last year at 4-0 was the Orlando Magic. And if you know anything about the Magic, yeah, definitely not planning on replicating what the Magic did last year. But Dale, whose record stands out the most to you right now?
Well, you mentioned the Suns, and I think they're the most surprising one. But specifically in the West, I think the two teams that stand out, one that's good and one that's bad, is the Timberwolves and the Clippers. The Timberwolves are up at, right now, they're third in the West with a 3-1 record, and the Clippers are 1-4, way down at 12th. And I think going in, we didn't really have any expectations for the Timberwolves. We said, maybe they'll make like a 10th seed and make a play-in if they're lucky. And we kind of thought the Clippers would really do pretty good even without Kawhi Leonard. So those have both been kind of surprising.
I will say the Timberwolves aren't nearly as surprising for me because I feel like in the past, they have this thing where they start off and they look like they're going to make the playoffs and they look like they could even be a top seed. And whether or not it's just Cat not having enough motivation or, it just gets really cold in Minnesota. I don't know what it is.
That's it. It's that one.
They just kind of lose their fire and end up falling off. So I still don't expect the Timberwolves to make the playoffs. And they could prove me wrong. Like Karl Anthony Towns is an amazing player, lacks on the defensive end, but great on the offensive end. And could definitely, I think, be the best player on an NBA Finals team. I just don't necessarily know if he has the motivations to get there. And obviously, he's had some really life-changing things happen over the past couple of years, losing a lot of family to COVID and things like that. And whether or not, what impact that has on him and his drive, I don't know. But I'd love to see the T-Wolves do well. I just don't think we will.
Yeah, and I just don't want the Jazz to play the Timberwolves in the playoffs, and maybe it's just because we had a rough time last season. But
last year when
we're a better team, it's just they had our number.
No, they did. And to be fair, if I remember correctly, the Jazz didn't have Donovan for those 2 games last year, so that really, bringing in the best offensive player on your team, the lifeblood of your team, I'd say, is definitely going to improve those outcomes. So
especially when it's playoff Donovan,
playoff Donovan,
playoffs
when 50 points is a low scoring game. No, not quite that, but no. T-Wolves are going to be interesting. They could definitely come out of nowhere, and so could the Kings. But I just think both of those teams are going to fall off. But other than that, Golden State almost went 5-0, definitely shocking a lot of people there. I know that everyone, thought that Vegas's record prediction for them was way too high and everyone took the under. So you definitely don't like if you took the under watching the Golden State Warriors sit at 4-1 right now, starting off above expectations. But it'll be an interesting year. I do expect things to kind of level back out, with the Lakers probably being lower than most people expected. And the Suns will have to climb out of the gutter, they're at 10. But I think they'll get back into the top 5 teams here in the next couple weeks. I don't know if they're going to go on a tear like the Jazz did, and win double-digit games in a row. But I think they'll get back into it.
Yeah, and I just want to point out we've already said this, but all these teams are 4 to 6 games into the season, which means every team has over 70 games left to play. Really, what happens now doesn't matter at all. But it's we're taking the data that we have and we're trying to figure out the trend. And that's the problem, is we just don't have much data yet.
Every team could still go 74-8. Every team could still break the Bulls record. Now, if the Pistons or the Pelicans went out and did that after their start to the season, that would be mind-boggling. But
the Pistons win the championship with Cade Cunningham this year.
Everything's still on the table, like you said. This is way too early. I mean, we know Jazz started out 4-4 last year and then won 50+ games in a reduced season. Orlando Magic started 4-0 and ended up literally selling everyone and just picking up draft picks. They got rid of Valanciunas, their best player, and sent him to Chicago. And we'll be seeing him tonight. That
means that's what the Jazz are doing.
No,
just going to rebuilding.
I don't. Even if the Jazz, were a lottery team this year, I don't know if they'd rebuild. Donovan Mitchell might ask out, but I don't know if they'd rebuild.
Well, and the reason we're nowhere near rebuilding is because we have the favorite for the MVP right now.
Well, yeah, so I guess according to Basketball Reference, they're giving, what did you say, Rudy Gobert almost a 50% chance of winning the award since he's averaging 18-18 right now?
Yeah, he's listed number 1 with a 47% chance. The number 2 is Jimmy Butler with 17%. So I don't know if I put either of them as realistic favorites for something like MVP. I don't think stats tell the story. I think something MVP, I would trust Vegas odds a lot more. Because they're putting factors other than stats into it.
Is definitely a lot more of an emotional thing, and what you did for the team. I would be really interested to see what happens if Rudy Gobert kept managing 15-15 plus, which is possible for the season. I don't know if he's going to keep that up in the points just because of the teams they've played, and they're going to play better teams that do a better job of stopping him and defending him than, the Rockets did. But I truly think that Rudy Gobert is the most valuable player on the Jazz. If you get rid of him, the Jazz aren't fighting for the 1 seed, and I don't think we're talking finals. If you got rid of Conley, I still think the Jazz could get a top 4 seed. It would be, sorry, not Conley, Mitchell. If you got rid of Mitchell, I still think the Jazz could get a top 4 seed. It would be harder. But even if you had a lower quality guard in that slot, just what Gobert does on defense is astronomically undervalued. Even if as a Jazz fan, you value it to a level more than most people do, I still believe it's way undervalued. People just don't realize what he does for this team.
Well, and let's imagine if Gobert just picks it up and he finishes his season averaging 20-20, and then he wins the MVP. Could you? There's already so much Gobert hate. Imagine what people on social media would say if Gobert walks away with the MVP, and
if the Jazz
everyone's talking about how he doesn't fit in the league anymore. But then when he retires and his legacy is however many Defensive Player of the Year awards he gets, which he might get a couple more in his career, plus an MVP, plus hopefully a championship. So that would be ridiculous.
If he finished 20-20, and the Jazz got the 1 seed, because I have a hard time seeing him finishing 20-20 without the Jazz getting the 1 seed. I would have a hard time not putting him in the MVP discussion, and not giving him the award. And I understand that that's somewhat of a homer take, but at the same time, really, who would have done better? I mean, it's Joel Embiid was in the discussion last year when he only played 50 of the games. If Gobert is playing all the games, averaging 20 points, so all of a sudden putting up a lot more points on the offensive end and still snagging all those boards. I mean, that's an impressive feat as is. And to lead your team to the NBA to the playoffs while doing that with the 1 seed, in my opinion, would definitely warrant serious consideration for the MVP award. I don't think he'd win it. I think he'd probably get the Defensive Player of the Year award, and people would then give the MVP to someone they want to. But I think that would warrant serious consideration for MVP.
Yeah, and if that happens, which it's unlikely that it does, but right now he's at 18-18, so and we're only 4 games in. But I think
from there, right? He's going to.
I think he's a
finish the
player.
season with 18-8, averaging 18-18, and the Jazz are going to go 82-0. If you just extrapolate the first games out over the last 78, that's mathematically how that works, right?
I've never seen that not work that way in the NBA. So. But if he continues this level of play and gets something close to 20-20, 18-18, he better be at least defensive. I mean, like all NBA second team. He's probably all NBA first team. But I don't know. There's a lot of good centers.
That's hard.
Jokic and Embiid come in with
Jokic
averaging 30+ points and 12 rebounds. So
you have Jokic and Embiid. And again, I still think Embiid isn't available enough to get all the love that he gets. And we'll see how that goes this year. And then if Anthony Davis starts playing center like he needs to for the Lakers, I mean, if he's eligible for the center spot, then that makes it even harder for Gobert. And I just think that Jokic and Embiid are just too good and too loved. I think overall, Jokic probably deserves it more. Well, it's hard, though, right? Because when you're comparing Jokic to Gobert, you're saying, do I want someone who can play defense really well and facilitate on offense by screening? Or do I want someone who doesn't know how to play defense and facilitates on offense as the point guard?
Do you want a 7-foot point guard or a 7-foot center?
Yeah. And I personally feel like you can't necessarily compare those. I feel like most times in the NBA, though, you always take offense over defense. Because rarely is someone such a defensive liability that they can't even play on the court at all.
And defense is a lot harder to measure. Defense doesn't go on the scoreboard. And so it's even if you get a block, you're how many times did you let someone score on you? But if you got 4 blocks in a game, you stopped 4 possessions and that's it. And you might have not even stopped them. They could have gotten the rebound and scored that possession. So defensive stats really don't tell how good of a player, how good of a defender players are.
And what defense is your team playing? If the Jazz are playing drop big, putting Rudy in the paint, and the other team is allowing them to play that, the Jazz are unstoppable. If they pull all 5 guys out so that all of a sudden Gobert has someone on the corner and, Donovan is doing his best, but hopefully he's not doing his best and he can improve, but letting people by him, all of a sudden Gobert can't be in the corner and guarding the paint at the same time. So you've stretched the Jazz too thin and you've shown the weakness of the other players that the Jazz have on defense. So there's a lot more to it and it'll be interesting to see. And I think both of us are in agreement. If we were betting now, we would be optimistically hopeful to see Gobert finish 15-15. That would probably be feasible, but even then, his boards are probably going to drop off in some games. And
the Jazz haven't been shooting great so far this season. I think their field goal percentage is going to start going up, which means there's going to be less offensive boards available, but he's been getting a lot of offensive boards. So I think that's why his rebounding numbers are so high right now.
And once someone on the Jazz starts hitting threes, then he's going to have less offensive possessions. But it is nice to see, and hopefully he can stay as engaged as he is. Because if we're able to get, 18-18 from Gobert on a night when the threes aren't falling, that makes me feel a lot more confident about the Jazz picking up wins on bad 3-point shooting nights.
Yeah, and that I don't know if there's an advanced metric. I haven't been able to find one, but I think, and this is something that maybe I should just create my own advanced metrics, because I think this what I'm trying to explain would be a really important stat, and it would show why Gobert is so important. I think there should be first off, I don't think there's a stat for forced turnovers. I think that if you can force someone to dribble the ball off their foot out of bounds, I think there should be a stat for that. But I think there should be like kind of like a plus minus for possessions. How many possessions do you add versus how many possessions do you take away? So like a missed shot, you lose a possession. But an offensive rebound, you gain a possession. A steal, you gain a possession. So most people are probably going to be negative because a missed shot is a lost possession. But if you can say, oh, this like on average for every 48 minutes, this person can get you 4 extra possessions. That's huge. Maybe that's taking like the Moneyball approach to basketball, where it's like, hey, if you can, like in Moneyball, like if you can get on base, you're valuable. So like a player who can get you extra possessions is valuable, even if they don't get the ball in the bucket.
The closest thing that I know to that is I know that David Locke has a stat that he calls points gained, and what it does is it sets the average player in the league as 0 points, and then I think it looks at points gained like per 100 possessions over that average team player. So
interesting.
But I get what you're saying though, where like if you're able to get a turnover, then that's valuable, and if you're able to get an offensive rebound, that's a different. Those are the same type of value that aren't necessarily reflected.
Normally, you get like most of the rebounds in the NBA are defensive.
Yeah,
our offensive rebound is stealing a defensive rebound from the other team, which is a possession. So,
no, I think that would be really interesting to workshop something like that.
And so. I don't know. You could also throw in like if you let your guy get an offensive rebound, that's the same as a turnover.
Yeah,
I think like that should be around the same value, and that's a really bad turnover because it's not even leading to a fast break. It's usually leading to a dunk because he's right there by the rim.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Or, because of where the NBA is at today, just an automatic kick out to the corner for an open 3-point shot.
Yeah.
Which, works. If you're hitting it, it works. And 3 is greater than 2, mathematically. I don't know a lot of things, but I do know that.
That's how I got through high school. I knew that fact.
So, last question. What record, where do you think the Jazz are going to finish? Do you think that they have a shot at getting 60 wins? Or do you think that with rest and things like that 60 wins is off the table?
I think the Jazz are as good as any 60-win team. Not 70-win teams, but I think they're as good as any 60-win team. I think what it will come down to is when does Rudy Gay come back, and how does he fill the role that we need him to?
Yeah.
I think maybe that's putting too much weight on Rudy Gay, but I think everything else is kind of going to fall into place, and Rudy Gay will be the difference between the Jazz being a 55-win team and a 62-win team.
And so, and then last question, because I already, asked the last question. So, with after watching what happened to Golden State when they went 73-9 and they beat the Bulls record, but then they were seemingly exhausted come the finals. Do we even want to see the Jazz flirt with 74-8? I don't think that's going to happen. Like, that's a crazy record, and the NBA is way too good for that to happen right now. But would we want to even see that happen?
I'm not going to say no. I don't like. Everyone blames that why Golden State lost. I would almost put more weight in like if you look at the Western Conference that year, the Spurs were like a high 60-win team. The Thunder were obviously ridiculous that year. Like that was probably the most competitive Western Conference as far as the top of the Western Conference we've seen in a very long time. The Warriors were lucky that they didn't even have to play the Spurs, but they had to play a really tough series against the Thunder, had to fight back. So I don't think it was necessarily the winning 73 games. I think it was how hard they had to fight the series before that. And I may be complete. And also,
was that the Draymond Green suspension in Game 5 as well?
I believe so. And because that was the year Cleveland won. And I don't want to say, oh, Cleveland won because Golden State was tired, because I think Cleveland earned that championship. Even if Golden State was a little fresher, I think Cleveland, maybe they wouldn't have pulled it off, but they fought hard for that. So
Yeah.
I want to put some credit on LeBron James and Kyrie Irving and that whole team, and not just say, oh, it's because the other team was tired. So
no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the thing where it's like, you can talk about it all you want, but if the Jazz go 74-8 this year, I'm losing my mind.
I know.
Like,
I'm not going to say no to it. Like, if that happens, that's awesome.
And again, that would be insane. Like, looking at the schedule and looking at the fact that you're playing, the Lakers, Nuggets, the Warriors are looking good, the Suns, the Hawks, the 76ers, the Bucks, like, only picking up 8 losses against those teams alone would be impressive. So it's an exciting year so far, and I'm super excited to see how they fare this weekend. I do think the Jazz are going to end up, Sunday night sitting at 5-1. I don't know who they'll lose to, but I think they'll pick up a loss in these next 2 games.
Yeah, that's kind of my prediction too. The thing is, I think we're better than the Bulls. I think we're going to lose one of the next 2. I think we're going to beat the Bucks though. So even though I don't think
Mike Conley's going to play,
I think we're going to drop to the Bulls.
I don't think that, and that's my thing, is I think we're going to get Jared Butler backup minutes and Joe Ingles starter minutes against the Bucks tomorrow night. And I don't know if I don't think the Bucks have Drew Holiday right now. And maybe I'm wrong on that.
But I just think the Jazz have matched up against Giannis really well. Like even when the Jazz were kind of like when we were having a tough time getting through the Rockets in the playoffs, and we really weren't the same team that we are now. Whenever we play the Bucks, we normally pulled out of those games. So that's why I'm thinking that. I think our matchup is just a little better.
I think if the Jazz had made it to the finals against the Bucks, 100% healthy, they win. Now you'll also have Suns fans who say if Chris Paul doesn't have his hand injury, then they win that series either. And then they win that series too. And it's just a bunch of what ifs, which is what we've, devolved to. But that's really all you can do after the first week of the season is talk about the what ifs. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please let us know what you think down in the comment section or on social media. Share with your friends, leave a like, follow wherever you're at. Thank you so much, and go Jazz!